Howdy, I'm Matt, and in this video we are going to be unboxing the Sky Shadow, so the Reptile S800 Sky Shadow version 2. Okay, so we're going to find out what difference this is compared to a version 1, and I'll give you a sneaky heads up, those of you which are wondering what the difference is. I think it only boils down to one of two things. Number one, this grey foam, so this is not the black version, this is a grey moulded foam version. The foam is apparently denser. And what was the other thing which was different in it? That was it, actually, as far as I can remember. So yeah, and pricing is pretty much exactly the same. So we'll get this one open and we will take a look. Now, while I'm getting this one unboxed, is that a couple of things which you need to be aware of. In short, number one is this model was bought out of my own money from my own abuses. And we will abuse this one. That is guaranteed. Here, it ragged the nuts off. And the big point is that this was not a freebie for review. It was bought out of my own money from my own abuses. As such, I think we can give it an unbiased review. Also, this is my first attempt, well, in maybe the past 3 weeks, at making a video. And unfortunately, I'm half stone deaf at the moment. I've got very, very little hearing, so my voice is going to be rather loud. And no apologies for that, because I just can't hear myself. And it's really frustrating. Those of you which have lost hearing for any period of time, you know how frustrating that is. And I've been like this for a week. Been in and out of the doctors, and hey-ho. There's not a lot they can do at the moment, so apologies if I am talking rather loudly. With that said, let's get on and get in there. Ooh, black stickers. Not entirely sure if I'll be using these stickers, to be honest. As many of you know, I don't normally put stickers on models, so we'll chuck those out of the way. We do have, that is a far superior setup guide than what we had before. And the reason why I'm saying it's a far superior is that I know this is only the kit version. I don't like plug and play versions of kit or of models, because I genuinely prefer to put in my own components. That said, if you did have the plug and play version, is that what we can see down here is that we've got all the channels and the switches for it, a wiring diagram which is pretty cool, no sign of a CG, but we do have a hint over there for the way the surfaces are supposed to be moving. Yeah, what we had on the version 1 was just literally, well, what I had, if you look back in the previous videos, is that all we had was a picture like that and a picture like that, and that was it. CG is saying 125 millimeters from the nose, and it says need to increase 70 gram weight when the aircraft head does not install GoPro. So yeah, we'll use 125 as a reference. As many of you already know, I always fly my models nose heavy, at least for the maiden, because that is the safest thing to do. Now, before we go any further, this foam looks, that's definitely EPP, and oh my goodness. Right, I'm going to zoom in, okay? I'm going to zoom in, and I want you to see how much force I'm trying to put on this before this foam moves, okay? So you're watching, look, wow, that's how tough that foam is. This foam is ridiculously tough, and I genuinely mean that. That was full force pushing that in there. That is, I'd say, twice as strong as the original black molded EPP. That is ridiculously strong, to say the least. Now, that's, well, there you go. If you want a reason why to go get a version 2, it's because it's tougher than the version 1. That is ridiculously strong. That is so dense. That is just absolutely bonkers dense. And I genuinely mean that. That is probably the, I thought the Mini Drac had dense foam. In fact, let me just make a point, okay? I've got, let me get it out of the bag. I'm gonna get this up here. That's a Mini Drac. We don't know what the Mini Drac is. It's absolutely amazing, but we won't go into the topic, But this foam is tough, okay? This foam is some of the densest EPP I have ever come across before. Before I met that model there. Because that foam is ridiculously thick. Anyway, you'll have to take my word for it. It is bonkers thick. we will need to cut that tab off there on the side. That's just the moulding tab. If we have a look up underneath here, magnets are pre-installed. What I will do on mine is put a little bit of goop glue, or maybe some E6000 glue. Excuse me. As you know, I leave all edits in. So we got some E6000 glue there, and I will just give that a wipe over those magnets just to make sure that they stick in. And by the way, you can buy that on Banggood. I'll put a link to it in the video description. It's something like $6 a tube, and you can see how big the tube is. Absolutely massive, and it's cheaper than Goop plumbing glue, but it's a little bit more runnier. A big tip for you, which again on my original S800, is that what I did was make a little tape latch. It's very simple. You just get a piece of sellotape, tape it in on there, fold it up, and then fold it back over on itself. So when you've got it in here, you can see that they've given us a little finger catch on there. Is that what I do is just use a little, probably put it on there, a little bit of tape, just so that it makes the catch easier to get in there. Just like the original, token ventilation on the lid. That's all that is. That's not going to get any air. If you have a look in there, there's no possible way of getting air into the main fuselage area. 2200 3S, 2200 4S pack will fit in there easily. Maybe a flight controller board at the back. As for the front, space for a normal run cam. Any run cam styled FPV camera will fit in the nose. And then you've got the side pocket there for a, a GoPro. In short, a GoPro style camera, maybe even like the khaki Turnigy 2K. So yeah, really straightforward. It's just like before. It does need a bit of a trimming up. There is a little bit of leftovers on the side, which is only going to take a few moments with a craft knife. Give you a heads up, on my original S800, which I had here, I don't like the ESC down underneath here. That's also only sized for a normal quad ESC. As many of you know, I don't recommend that you put quad ESCs in RC models, model airplanes, because there just isn't the cooling in here, whereas on a quad it's fine because it's on the arm and the propeller is always swinging round and round and round and round, and given the ESC lots and lots of air pressure on top of it, it will always stay cold. Whereas if it's tucked up underneath there, and remember that's the other way up, so any heat, as we know, rises, so it's going to stay lovely and cool in there, very little airflow, not ideal. So I will be using a proper ESC on this one, probably a Hobby King 30 amp ESC, because it's my normal ESC of choice for models like this. So yeah, first impressions, mental strong foam. Now we've got the winglets on the end, same as before. We just need to trim those off with a craft knife, really straightforward, so very, very simple tools which are needed. Big heads up, these little pieces of foam, like this, don't throw these away. You need these, you'll need to cut off there and there, because you need that to cover up the main spar underneath the wing itself, and we get two of those, one for each side of each wing. Let's go and get the wings out. There's one. And yeah, it's absolutely stunning in grey, that's for sure. Absolutely stunning in grey. Now, if you had the if you had the plug and play kit, is that this is where your electronicals are normally hiding, in the side of here. But what have we got on here? We'll have a look at that now. Ooh. Right, get rid of the box. Okay, there's the completely pointless back. Now, those of you which have got a plug and play kit, is that you will get the stabiliser built into the top of these as well. But it's completely useless because you get this little board. Let me just zoom in there a second. There we go, and you'll see that it's got two little inductors on there, and it will give you, what's it got on the outputs on there? It's got 5 out and 9 volts out for some strange reason, and I'm not going to use that. In short, completely useless for what I need it for, and it doesn't have the stabilizer built in. It's just a BEC, called battery eliminator circuit, so that you can get 5 volts out for your maybe a receiver, or if again, assuming your ESC doesn't have a BEC in it, which not most quad ESCs don't have a BEC in them. Like as I've already said, I'm going to be using a proper aeroplane BEC ESC, which does have a BEC installed in it. So let's get ourselves back out again. So frankly, I won't be using that. I'll stick that over to one side. Semi-okay control horns. I say semi-okay is it because there's a bit of flex in them, but they're very, very simple to fix because what you can do on the actual push rod itself. So let me just again I'm going to zoom in again, get it the right way around, on the push rod itself, is that once I've got them in and measured, what I'll do is put a piece of carbon fibre rod on top. Again, I'll put a link to that in the video description, and then just put a bit of heat shrink tubing over the top, bit of super glue down the side, heat gun on the top, and then that stops this flexing around, and it means that you end up with a far more responsive model. So I will be doing that to this one. Again, I think pretty sure I did it to the last one as well. Motor mount, battery, that goes on that's for the battery strap inside, you glue that in, and there's the battery strap which goes on the top. 2 servo extensions of no real length, an XT60 connector, a little pot of carbon fibre, some screws. So those are the little bolts. Those are the bolts which hold on the plate onto the bottom, the 2 plates underneath the wings, and probably the motor mount as well, can't really remember. Really straightforward, and some screws there which are for the motor mount. So looking at this is not like, say, wire wire. We'll open this up so you can see what you'd get in yours. And just as a disclaimer, they did change the original version 1s from the ones which I had to the ones which then went into later production. They actually took away the motor extension block, which ironically I've been and bought. And let me just see if I got them on the side of me, because I know that when they were here, so you'll have to excuse me a moment, because I know, see, I knew I had them. Now these cost about $3, something like that, but in my honest opinion, they're worth it. So you'll see there, we've got an X bracket and then 4 extension blocks, and this is what they took away on the version 1 kits. So on the V1 kits, the very first kits came with this motor mount and those extension brackets, which then meant you could bring the motor back away. Let's zoom back out again, go the wrong way. There we go. So you could then move the motor back out here, which then meant the propeller got cleaner air. And of course, if your propeller's in cleaner air, that means that number 1, it's quieter, and number 2, it's faster. Okay, so there's 2 big reasons why you would want to move your motor away from and like the sides of these, or the back of these pieces of foam here, is because it will make it quieter. Again, let me just, again, practical point of view. We'll grab the mini jack again, and you'll see that what I've got here is that I've got this motor. Look, it's miles away from the rear of the actual model itself. It does mean I need to put more weight in the nose, which is actually easier to move the battery forwards, but this propeller is out in cleaner air, should I say, which then we got on average an extra 7 miles an hour, something like that, 7 to 10 miles an hour extra just by putting this motor back further, and it was a third quieter, which made an absolutely massive difference on the flight line, untold difference for this one. And as you can see, I've had the mini track here for months, and I know we're supposed to be talking about the Sky Shadow, but an important point, if you do move your propeller back, it will give you cleaner air, and it will make your model fly faster. So 2 very good reasons to do that, and that little kit, $3, something like that. I'll put a link to it in the video description on YouTube for you, and that's what I'm going to be putting on mine, so that it will be an extension on the back of this plate, moving the motor out, I don't know, just over 1/4 of an inch, something like that. And it may not sound like a lot, but once you get it in the sky, and if you try and model with it and then try and model without it, you will hear the difference. So a couple of bits of carbon. I don't really know what those are for. I've got no idea. Oh, that must be the little to go on the top of. Again, I could always look on the diagram, but being a bloke, you know how it is, we'll look on that last. And then again, the little carbon bits on the top, which do make it look cool, to be honest, but provide absolutely bugger all ventilation, because that's not really going to scoop any air in there at all. And also, there's no real place for the air to escape. So maybe you want to think about cutting a hole here on the side so air can get out, and maybe putting a hole here on the front to let some air in. Again, you'll need to just keep an eye on the temperature of the ESC and the components in your battery inside the actual component area itself, and make your own decision on that over time. So, oh, you do get a little plug, which unfortunately mine's broken. The little corner's been broken off, so I don't know how that happened. That wasn't me. It looks like, I think it's been stabbed by these tubes and rods, and that's just a little block which fits in the nose area. And that foam is so tough. Again, I'm just going to zoom in again, just to make the point. Right, we're right in there now, okay? That front piece is compressing, but this back piece over here, no, don't want to go down at all. So yeah, some of that bit there's softer, definitely softer than this back piece. That is the toughest, or the most densest EPP foam I have come across any model. And those of you which know this channel, I've got a lot of models, I've been for a lot of models, and that is the densest by a country mile. Having a look at that, it does look like carbon fibre. We get two main spars, one which goes at the front of the wing, one near to the back, and then we get some rods which go in the wings themselves. Really straightforward. This is a quick build, what we're talking 20 minutes, something like that, just to glue it up, if that. I always get asked which glue which I'm going to be using, and I just having a look to see it. No, I don't see any goop plumbing glue. Like I said, I'll use some E6000 glue. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And also remember, a massive tip for you is get a sanding pad anywhere which you're going to be gluing. These edges, the foam isn't absolutely rinsed in mould release like the V1 was, but even still, I want to clean up that edge all the way along there to make sure there's a flat seam and you can see the holes there for where the spars would go. Get yourself a sanding pad and sand up those surfaces so there's a really good key for the glue to stick the actual parts of this wing model, or this flying wing, together. Again, you do the main fuselage, and don't forget you need to do the outside of the wing where you're gluing up as well. So moving on quickly, excuse me, move that out of the way, so take a look at the wing. Exactly the same layout as before. The winglet which we've got here on the side, put that around on there, they just glue on the ends, really straightforward. So just sand up the surfaces, a little bit of that E6000 glue, a couple of dress pins in there to hold it still. Servos mounted up on the wings, really straightforward. We've got the 4 holes there. Now, depending on which, again, on your suggested layout, is that one thing which I found, and again, it's going to be exactly the same issue here for me, is these bays, they'll be fine for just a standard FPV transmitter, which I don't have. I'll put a link to the one which I normally use, which is an Eachine TX526, switchable little video transmitter. It's got the LCD screen on the back, does 25, 200 and 600 milliwatts, and it does all the channels, including race band and the lower boss cam and the upper boss cam ones as well. Brilliant little video transmitters, and they've worked brilliant for me, so they'll definitely fit in there okay. And we can just put a 90-degree connector. Oh, I will put a link to the right connector for you. I'll give you one which is got an SMA output where you put your antenna in, and I'll also give you a link to a RP SMA antenna connector as well, so that you've got a 90-degree bend which will go out that hole, and then you just need to choose the right one so that you've for your right antenna. But it will be a female RPMSA on here, 90-degree bend, so you can imagine that goes in and then pokes out of here, and then you can screw your antenna in there for ease of use. Looking at the elevons now, those of you which know from, or maybe you already owned a V1, is that the elevons, they always needed some tape, some Blendum tape along those edges. I'll put a link to a video in the top right hand corner, whichever side it is, to a video that shows you how to do that. Basically, you just make sure you pull that down and then put the tape on around the edges so it doesn't try and stretch or go against you. The hinge does feel pretty good. That said, I will put some Blendum tape on mine. Underneath, we will need to put in one of those spars like we saw. There's another space there for one of the other spars as well. We do have that foam on the end. I'm going to see if we can find a craft knife. There we go, that was easy. We'll get ourselves a craft knife. Just going to cut that tab off. So you do need to cut those tabs off. And you just look how thick, how dense that foam is. It is bonkers, crazy bonkers dense. And again, while you're there, I'm going to try and squeeze it right on the edge. So try and hold it still. So I'm going to see how much force I can. That's right on the edge. And it's only just bending. Now, if you also want to know how tough moulded EPP is, now, if you've got this up loud, you need to turn it down now. So if you've got earphones in, turn it down now, because I'm going to bash this on the desk really hard, repeatedly, just to make the point that it's moulded EPP and it's ridiculously strong. So you ready? All right, and I'm not going to hold back. Oh, I did that so hard I broke the corner up there. That's where my grip was off. I didn't have a good enough grip on it. So let me go and grab the other one. I'm going to give that one a beating. So you ready for this? That one's gone over there. It's tough stuff, okay? And the other thing is that, like I said, that's me when I was grabbing it on the corner, using it, and there was loads of stress in that corner, and there's bits on the bottom. So you'd have to let it off for that. But I'm absolutely whacking it, even on the corner. See, that's me bashing it right on the edge of the table, and you'll see that it cracked, but it's still structurally there. And to fix stuff like this, the moulded EPP is really simple. All you do, grab yourself some E6000 or Goop plumbing glue, poke it in the hole, stick a dress pin in there, and jobs are good. And this foam is ridiculously tough. In the version 1, which we had, I flew it into a tree at about 100 miles an hour. Again, there's video, top right hand corner, straight into the tree, and it took an absolute beating. And literally, next day, we're out flying again. All I did was just stuck a bit more Goop glue in there, and off we went. Now, there's one thing which you need to know about, one little mod, which is, just going to tidy up the back of this one a sec, so that you can see it. Get this right way round. Right, okay. There's one little mod for you, and it's very, very simple, which is that you'll have your spars going through the wings. Let's get those undone a sec. I'm going to take those through. So that one goes through there, and then there's another one on the front as well. Like I said, it's only a 20-minute build. Dead simple thing to build. Oh, and you remember those bits which I said about cutting off, you just trim those up, and the one bit goes in the front and the other bit, the longer bit, goes in there just to cover those spars up. But that tip I was talking about is really simple. Those of you which are going to fly your models really, really hard, is that if I zoom in just down here, is that what you want to do is get yourself a bit of carbon rod or strip, okay, and then across here, this back joint, okay, is when you go to glue it, so when you go to glue the wings on, is that once that's been set, do take the extra time just to put an extra slit in across here, and then put some carbon, either carbon strip or carbon rod across this back piece, because that was the one weak point which I found with my original one, is that after extensive, and I mean extensive abuse, is that it will give in that little area, and I had to glue up mine several times. And once I put just maybe an inch either side, so a 2-inch piece of carbon rod, bit of glue, and that just solved it. And then again, once you've got it in there, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So. Right, let me go and get the other wing from over there, which I hit so hard on the desk it bounced off and went flying. Again, that one needs just trimming up a sec as well. Like I said, all you need is a craft knife, a sanding pad and a bit of glue. And of course you need your components too, but it's really straightforward to get these things built. And if you want to see a build video on this, I think I put one on YouTube a while back. I'll put a link to the original S800 series, but set that on there. Really straightforward wing to build, absolutely straightforward wing to build. Bit of glue, little bit of time, cheap components, and off we go. So yeah, what's my thoughts right now? And remember, this model was bought out of my own money, from my own abuses. It was not a freebie for review. My honest thoughts right now is that foam is the most densest EPP foam I have come across in any model to date. And I've been through a lot of models, and that is the densest foam which I've got. I'm absolutely surprised that I was able to break it, and again, I was able to rip it in the corner because I was only just grabbing it foolishly just by that corner, and it's broken there. But it is ridiculously tough stuff. And you've seen me bash it on the desk, and the only way which I was able to break it is that when I was bashing it right on the corner of the desk like that, and we got a few little nicks on the front. Oh, one other tip for you, actually, while I've got this wing in your hand, if you want to save this front edge. So if you're going to be flying in long grass, or you're going to be FPVing through trees and bushes, and you're anything like me, which is that you're likely to hit them quite frequently, is that if you just get a piece of sellotape, and I'll quickly show you this, I'm sure I've got some sellotape underneath. If I do, let me just grab some. Again, use the decent stuff, make sure it says sellotape inside. If you buy the cheap stuff, it just doesn't last at all. So yeah, do splash out £1 or $1 on some decent stuff. And all you do, some sellotape, and it's just so simple. You line it up on the front edge. Again, that's probably not going to come out on the camera very well, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to tack that down. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so you see I've got it lined up on the edge. I'm just going to run my finger all the way along the edge, like so, and then you're going to see me just starting to bend it over, like so. I'm going to zoom back out now so you can see what's going on. There we go. Just bending it over, remember my finger, and again I have to do this again properly in a moment. And you just bend it over all the way along the edge, make sure it sits down, and that is an extremely simple mod, which then means that when you fly into a branch or a twig, anything like that, is that it will save this leading edge. And if you're anything like me, you've had models and if you've just creepy chunks hanging out of the front leading edges, you would be absolutely amazed how much just that simple piece of sellotape along the leading edge will help you, will help your models last much longer. And I can again give you a real life example. I did that to a micro sky hunter, and I flew it, hit a branch at full speed. It was only on 3S at the time, I hasten to add. It wasn't 4S crazy fast, but it was pretty damn fast. I caught a branch, the model just span and landed on the ground, and the only thing which I had in the wing was a tiny little dent, and that it was all down to that piece of sellotape. Just saved the model, or just saved the wing from being ripped off. So yeah, just a simple piece of sellotape all the way along the leading edge. And of course, if it gets tatty later on, you can just peel it back off again. Simple as that. And then of course, clean it up and then put a fresh piece on there. So anyway, let's get ourselves to go and get ourselves wrapped up now. The S800. Absolutely amazed on how dense that foam is. It is crazy dense. I'm just here poking it with the back end of a knife. Yeah, crazy dense to say the least. And I just wonder if we can have quite a look in here so you can see how dense the foam really is. I'll cut the lid off the top of here, mate. Yeah, that is absolutely nuts. Let's see if I can hold it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put it on top of there. I was trying to zoom in on top of it and see how well that comes out. So you can see, that's not in focus, is it? Come on, focus. There we go. That is absolutely ridiculously dense. So what are my thoughts right now? Thoughts right now, stupidly dense. If it flies as good as, which to be honest to me, it looks exactly the same as the V1. The only thing which I can see they've changed is they've changed it to a more denser foam. That's the only difference which I can see here. Everything else looks pretty much exactly the same, like we've covered in this video or in this unboxing. And yeah, and if it flies like an S800, which it looks like an S800, as near as damn it probably came out of exactly the same mould. It's going to fly great, in short. Very simple setup. I will put the full details of my setup, which I'm going to be going with. It will be a 2205, 2300 kV motor on the back, 30 amp ESC in the middle, either a 2200 3S or a 2200 4S battery pack in the nose. Like I said, the Eachine TX526 video transmitter and one wing. Oh, that other tip which I mentioned is that I will be using a D4R2 video receiver because I use FR Sky. Is a little tip for you. What you can do is cut out underneath here, so that void. Let me zoom in again for you. And again, I'm trying to give you as many tips as possible because I know pretty much exactly what I'm going to do with this one. Is that to get a D4R2 receiver in there, is to get it in there seamlessly. Is that if you get a craft knife and then cut out, again, you don't want to get into the lid, you want to cut out in that little edge just there and then dig out underneath there so you can then get your antennas out either up underneath the wing or maybe drag one out on top of the wing. Again, if you put it underneath, cut in underneath there, really simple to do. Again, just need like a little number 11 craft knife, just jab it in there, cut it out. You could, of course, get a blowtorch and a piece of wire and then melt it out. Of course, that requires a little bit more skill and well, mind your fingers in short for that, and that means I can get a D4R2 receiver in there. FPV camera, probably. I've got a collection kicking around. I don't know which one I'm going to use for that, and like I said, I'll put links to all the stuff which I'm going to use on mine in the video description below in the video description for you. So with that said, like I said, my voice was going to be rather loud for this one. I'm still stone deaf, unfortunately. Hopefully that'll pass in the next couple of days. But yeah, this is the Reptile S800 version 2, which is exactly the same as the version 1 for as far as I can tell. But this foam is tougher. It is, like I said, I'm going to say it again. I've probably said it about 4 or 5 times already. Ridiculously dense, and if it looks like an S800, it probably came out exactly the same mould. The only thing which I can see is they've changed the foam, which is, to be frankly honest, happy days. Tougher foam, longer lasting model, brilliant. I can hit more trees, you can hit more trees. Now if you have any questions about this model, please just ask. Oh, and I know that I always get these kind of questions coming in from other pilots. Is like, Matt, how big is the battery bay? The battery bay is 12 centimeters across, which is about 4 3/4 of an inch, by approximately 3.5 inches deep, or width, which is about 8 centimeters, and the deepest part is 35 millimeters, or just over, just over 1.5 inches in short. Well, sorry, just under 1.5 inches at the tallest part, and then at the shallowest part is 2.5 centimeters, or about 1 inch at the back. So yeah, battery bay, get a decent sized battery in there. Again, if you're not going to run a GoPro in the nose, then you will need to obviously substitute some weight on there. And like we saw on the manual a few moments ago, the CG was 125 millimeters away from the nose. Oh, servos. I will be using Tower Pro MG90S servos. They are cheaper than the cheap Hobby King servos, and they're metal geared as well. Brilliant servos, and that's what I'm going to be using in this wing. So my point being, if you've got any questions about this model, please just ask in the comments section underneath this video. I would love to hear back from you if you've got any questions about it. And of course, if you're not already subscribed yet, don't forget to press the subscribe button, because we're going to go and take this out for a maiden. And I can guarantee you, without a doubt, I will wrap this one round a tree at full knacker, just to make the point that these are tough as old boots. I've done it before several times. Those of you which remember the original S800 maiden, I was the first one to get the FPV footage out onto YouTube. The first FPV flight is that I hit a tree with it. The third flight, I hit dead man's arm with it. The fourth flight, I think we were all good. And then the fifth or sixth flight, I stuck it in a tree at 100 miles an hour, and like I said, it did survive. So yeah, really, really good models. I do like them. They fly great. They're cheap as chips, and now they just got tougher than old boots. In short, they are crazy, crazy strong. So on that note, for myself, Matt, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I shall see you again shortly. For myself, Matt, cheerios!